Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. We live in a reboot society. Everything has to be remade, repackaged, redone. But that got me thinking, if there was a TV show from back in the day that I wanted to see being remade and rebooted, which would it be? And my first answer, the first thing that came to my mind, Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Now it turns out there is a plan to have this show rebooted. George Clooney's production company Smokehouse is already apparently in the preliminary stages of planning. Legendary Entertainment, who are commissioning this series, want to create a whole franchise. They want to create movies, TV shows, and perhaps even an anime-style animated series. They want to create this as a multi-platform franchise for their future. There is also a second company, Skydance Productions. They are also trying to create their own project. Both of these production companies seem to think that they own the rights. So obviously, we might be seeing a bit of a complex legal battle. But we'll come to that a bit later. So I only really come to this from a Buck Rogers in the 25th Century 1979 TV series. That is my access to the show. That is really my knowledge of this character. It turns out he's a much older character than that, however. This character is actually about 100 years old. It all dates back to a novella called Armageddon 2419. In that short book, written by Philip Francis Nolan, the character is actually named Anthony Rogers. He was a mining engineer, trapped underground. There was some sort of accident, he was cryogenically frozen, and he woke up in the 25th century. In that series, the planet was being invaded by some alien threat, and there was an interplanetary conflict going on. And a lot of the story is about how Anthony Rogers then sort of adapted to this new century. In 1929, that was then turned into a comic book strip series. They changed the name to Buck Rogers, thank God, and the new character was born. Other elements of the story were also changed. He became a World War I veteran that was trapped underground and cryogenically frozen. There was some sort of radiation gas involved, and it all got a bit complicated. But back in the day, in the 20s, they thought radiation could do anything. They thought it was awesome. Radioactive spider bites you, don't die, turn into Spider-Man. Now, the 1979 series obviously didn't follow that original comic book storyline. In that series, again, the Earth is in a planetary conflict with the Draconians. In the comic book series, though, and the series that apparently George Clooney and Smokehouse Productions want to take this, the Earth has actually been invaded and occupied by an alien threat. Buck Rogers then joins the resistance and fights back against this threat. Now, the 1979 TV series knew to have a little bit of humour. Glenn A. Larson's TV shows generally had a little bit of humour involved in them. Battlestar Galactica, Airwolf, going on and on and on. They're also a little bit camp. I actually think, though, for a TV series like this to be successful, it needs to embrace the fact that the plot of the story is a little bit ridiculous. He gets frozen and wakes up 500 years later. That plot is slightly silly, and you need to embrace that, like they did in Demolition Man. It also gives you the opportunity to inject a little bit of humour. In Stargate SG-1, they knew to have a little bit of humour. They knew to have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, some sarcasm, some jokes, referencing other TV shows and things like this, to, embracing the silliness. Buck Rogers in the 25th century has to do that too, and I actually think George Clooney would know that. He's not a stranger to injecting a little bit of humour into his projects. The Men That Stare at Goats is one that jumps to mind. That's actually quite a serious movie in lots of ways, but it's ridiculous in other ways. They completely embraced how stupid the plot was, even though it was actually based on a true story. But if you consider how much our community and how much our society has just changed in the last 30 to 40 years, could it change over the next 400 or 500 years? Especially as in this storyline, the Earth has had a massive nuclear conflict, World War III, and obviously has then been invaded by an alien threat. Society might have changed massively. How does he then adapt to that is going to be a really interesting plotline. So the legal battle. The basic problem comes from the fact that this is a very old character. Now, the family, the Nolan family, say they own the rights. Their granddad wrote the original story, therefore they own the character of Buck Rogers. However, it's not quite that simple. One of the producers, supposedly, for the new series is John F. Dill. Now, John F. Dill's granddad was one of the creators of the comic strip. Legendary Pictures say they solely own the rights to Buck Rogers. Skydance say they do, and have issued a cease and desist letter to Legendary Pictures saying, you are not to make this series. You must stop all action immediately. Where it gets a little bit even more complicated, however, if when you've got a character that's 100 years old, copyright laws get a little bit fuzzy. If you think about the Sherlock Holmes character, the Arthur Conan Doyle estate own elements to that story. They copyrighted elements to the original stories, but they don't really own the character Sherlock Holmes. This is why Netflix can produce Enola Holmes. We get other series that are based in and around the character, and they don't have to pay the Doyle family estate massive royalty fees. A lot of the character exists within the public domain, and that complicates copyright law. So that basically means we could see both of these projects actually come to fruition. But let's be honest, neither of the production companies are going to want the other one to do it, because it's going to affect their profits. So there is almost certainly going to be a massive legal battle, and probably one of the main reasons why this project hasn't really moved on since back in January when it was announced. But what is the main thing we have to see if this series is rebooted? What is the number one thing you remember from Buck Rogers in the 25th century? It's the Thunder Fighter. That fighter is one of the best designs in sci-fi. For me, it's right up there with like the X-Wing or a TIE Fighter or the Viper from Battlestar Galactica. Interesting point here. Glenn A. Larson obviously produced both of these shows, Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers in the 25th century. They shared a lot of the props to save money. They recycled a lot of the props and the sets and things. The design for the Thunder Fighter, though, was actually the original concept design for the Viper. The Viper was supposed to look like this. This design has to come back. It was one of my favourite designs when I was a kid. I had the toy, and if they don't bring it back, that will be a crime against all of sci-fi, and we will have to punch George Clooney in the face for it. So, what do I think? Is this show going to come back? I think almost certainly yes. In what guise and what the legal battle is between now and then, I don't know. But I could see a streaming service like Netflix being desperate for this show. They badly need content, and they're always looking for that next big thing. And this so could be it. Star Trek's popularity is pretty good at the moment, but there's always that threat of getting a bit bored of it. We had Voyager and then we had Enterprise, and people got a bit of Star Trek fatigue, and I think there's a risk of that again. So we'll be looking for that next big thing, that next big sci-fi project. This could be that, and it really does give the opportunity for a really nice balance between the drama and certain comedy elements that really, I think, make a beautiful sci-fi show, but also that reflects society. And I know people are going to say, oh, they're going to make it woke, they'll make Buck Rogers a woman. I don't care really if they do or not, if it's relevant to the show. But there are elements within our divided society that Buck Rogers in the 25th century could exploit and could reflect within the show to make it a really interesting project. So I hope they do bring back Buck Rogers in the 25th century. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you see all of our new videos pop up. It really, really helps us out.